All right, everyone. So we got a major matchup, divisional game, which is the second game of the NFL season. It is the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Los Angeles Chargers. So it is the Chiefs are 3-point favorites. The total for the game is 45 and a half. On the money line, the Chiefs are minus 170 and the Chargers are plus 142. So what we're going to do is, as we always do, we'll give you an argument for why both sides can cover this spread. So we'll start with the Chiefs. Look, the Chiefs, I understand they got embarrassed in the Super Bowl, but this is a team that was going for three straight Super Bowl wins last year. They were pretty dominant at times last year. And once again, if you see a line like this, because this is not a home game for the Chargers, right? This is a game that is being played at, I mean, it's a neutral site, right? And so when I look at something like that, I go, how many times are you going to get the Chiefs at -3 with Patrick Mahomes at quarterback? I just think every time, similarly with, how the Patriots used to be, anytime people go, yeah, it's about time to, kind of put the final nail in the coffin in the Kansas City Chiefs. And nope, they're back. They're back. They're back. And we're looking at them at -3 here. It is just a very nice spread to have. It's a key number, right? So if this gets up to 3.5 or it gets up to 4, maybe now you have a different take on the game. But at -3, what we're talking about is basically, are they going to win this game? Meaning, if the Chiefs are struggling, right, and the Chiefs are, battling it back with the Chargers, and you kick a game-winning field goal, you're pushing. Okay, that's what you're doing. You're pushing, and there's also a chance that they kind of dominate this game. So that's, to me, very simply the reason is, historically speaking, this spread feels very easy to bet on the Chiefs. -3, nothing crazy. And if the Chiefs play at their best and the team we've seen them play in past years, a 3-point spread is a gift to people. Very simply put. Now let's give the argument for the Chargers. This is a little bit of a different argument because I truly believe that the Chiefs are going to be pretty good this year. Again, obviously, but I can't quite get out of my head either that, think about for all of last season, the goal was three-peat, three-peat, three-peat. We're doing something that has never been done. And I understand that there's still, making that fourth kind of Super Bowl appearance in a row. That's another historic thing that they could go after. But it just feels to me that, I can only imagine because it's not something like, okay, next season we could just break this record again. This was 3 years in the making. All right. So you've been trying something for, you got 1 year, you won that, how tough that is. Then you got there the second time, you did it again. To get there the third time, and the third time you come up short, there just has to be this kind of letdown when you start this next season. Now, maybe there's some anger regarding, losing and all of that, and maybe I'll be dead wrong. But I don't think it's completely out of the question that this Chiefs team just doesn't have it the same way they've had it in past years. And there's also a pretty strong argument that the Chargers are set to be as good as they've been in quite some time. They have solid coaching. They are focused on making sure, specifically on that offensive line, that they are elite, and that's key. I mean, I know they lost some key players to injury. That's an issue, but at the end of the day, this is a Chargers team that's as well coached as they've been in a long time. They still have Justin Herbert, who's a very good QB. And we know that in recent years, specifically in the regular season, although Mahomes has come up huge in key spots, and he's been, by far, if you could pick one quarterback in the NFL to be on your team, you would pick Patrick Mahomes every time. But this offense isn't the offense from a few years ago that we remember with the Kansas City Chiefs. This is a team that has struggled, and we've seen them drop these type of games. That's kind of like, especially a divisional game, like, I could see them losing, right? Because of the Chargers. We know that this isn't the same Chargers team that we've seen in the past, right? And you have another year of Harbaugh, Justin Herbert. He really needs to pick it up at some point here. He's been very hyped since he came into the league. He's had some good moments, but he just hasn't been able to put that whole season together. And what better way to kind of come onto the scene and send a message than to beat the Kansas City Chiefs, a division game on the second, the second game of the NFL season that everybody is going to be watching. I just think this is a situation where I could certainly see it happening, right? So before we give you our pick, let's go down and just look at some of the different prop bets that they have. Now, it's interesting because once again, as we always say with props, the first thing I do when I'm judging what prop I'm going to place is what type of game do we think we're going to see? Meaning, if you think you're going to see a shootout, well, you're probably going to be looking for TD scores, right? Because you're like, okay, there's going to be a likelihood that some of this happens. If you don't, then I usually, you try to stay away from props, or you find kind of those players who you're like, all right, these are the guys that would score in a game when they kind of need a touchdown. So obviously the leading odds here are on Hampton at plus 130, Xavier Worthy at plus 135, Najee Harris at plus 155, Travis Kelce at plus 170, Pacheco at plus 165. So we're going to stop there for 1 second because, you got to factor in what type of offense is Harbaugh going to be running. He's certainly going to want to try to be running the football. Does that, are they going to be in those goal line situations against a really good Kansas City defense? You have some of these receivers who are here. The Chiefs, who is going to step up big for them? I mean, you could really, this is why I usually stay away from props. You can make an argument for a lot of these guys. Xavier Worthy, with Rashid Rice out, Worthy, can he come up and make that big play? Marquise Brown, can he get there at plus 210? Kareem Hunt, Patrick Mahomes running one in with his legs. Like, this is why I stay away from these type of things because, they all kind of look good, right? I could see them all looking good, but not all of them are going to hit. So I'm not going to give kind of a pick on those because I'm not going to be playing one, but you can just get a good look at what Vegas is thinking in terms of who is going to score the football. Now, pass yards is interesting, right? Because as you can see, they basically have these right around the numbers, right? 228 last year, so it's 230 plus. 242 last year, and it's at 250. So you're basically, if you go down to 240 here, it's minus 120. So you're basically getting kind of their averages from last year. But this goes back to what type of game are we going to be seeing? Meaning, what is Harbaugh going to be trying to do to Patrick Mahomes? Does he want him? Are they going to say, look, we're going to stop the run game and make these guys pass a lot or something? Like, what is it that he's going to do? In this case, I would lean towards the under. I do not see, the Chargers allowing Patrick Mahomes to throw the ball over the place. I think they're going to try their best to make life absolutely miserable for him. On Justin Herbert's side, look, I know last year he was getting 228, but what we're talking about is a Chiefs defense that, a lot of credit is given to Patrick Mahomes, and he deserves it. But even going back 2 Super Bowls ago, the defense was the one that really won them that Super Bowl because when the offense was struggling all throughout the first half, and then Patrick Mahomes to start the second half throws an interception, it was the defense that held them, and then the offense kind of found themselves and were able to win the football game. That defense is elite. And so when I see Justin Herbert at 230, and we know, okay, we absolutely know that Harbaugh has no problem trying to run the football, it makes you think, I don't like any of these overs in terms of any semblance of passing yards, and it's pretty tough to trust touchdowns as well. And the same would be going for pass TDs. Like even this at minus 173, right? Are we really interested in a Patrick Mahomes 2+ TDs at minus 173? I mean, we're talking 3 is plus 233 and 4 is plus 557. 5 is obviously crazy. I last year he averaged 1.6, so it just doesn't feel like there's great odds here. Herbert, maybe I'd be a little bit more willing because we're getting a little bit better odds, but still, I mean, Harbaugh may run in some of these touchdowns. And if that's the case, I don't think you're going to, I don't think you can have 2 rushing touchdowns. And on top of that, you're going to have 2 passing from Justin Herbert. Receiving yards, once again, this is interesting because my guess is you look at all these props, somebody here is going to get over their average or is going to, hit, right? Somebody will. But in a game like this, you're not going to probably have a ton of them. Keenan Allen, we don't know exactly what he's going to look like this year. 40 is not a super high number for him, but at the end of the day, I mean, it almost feels a little bit like value when you're averaging 49.6 and we're getting 9 yards kind of freebies. Not bad. Getting the same here with Lad McConkey, but it's just this doesn't feel like a offensive, masterpiece game. Receptions, I will say that receptions might be a little bit different because, when we're talking about what they could do reception wise, you can have a really good defensive performance for the Chiefs where Lad McConkey gets like 7 receptions because he's getting, shorter things, or Keenan Allen, or Will Disley getting 3 plus, right? You could see some of this. Pacheco, maybe if the defenses are good, or the Chargers defense is playing well, you get some free dump downs. I could certainly see it. Rush yards, once again, they only actually have the prop for Justin Herbert, which is quite interesting. But if you think that this team is gonna, the Chiefs are gonna get up early, why not? And I find it interesting even here. If we're talking about I want to place a Mahomes bet, I don't hate something like this. Okay, 20 and a half average last year. He usually picks him up in chunks because when he's running, it's usually because he's running like, we're talking for the first down, a 10 plus clip. If they're really going to be going after him, trying to blitz, maybe he sneaks out and gets some. Xavier Worthy. He's a guy that did a lot of those end around type deals, he averaged 5.6, but I think a lot of that is because they weren't doing it often. But this could be the game they do it. And we're talking a 15 plus. This is actually a bet I might place, to be completely honest with you. Xavier Worthy, 15 plus. I could see him, getting 1 or 2 carries. But and usually, they're going, usually he can maybe get a chance for going for a big gain. I will say though, one thing to worry about is we've seen that play run a lot in the red zone, which means, if they're only going to run the play once, he might see a rushing yard at, and get 8 of them early on a sick play and never see the ball again rushing wise. So just keep that in mind. This is an interesting bet down here too with Isaiah Pacheco because what we're looking at is rushing and receiving. And I always like, some people like to bet just rushing or just receiving. And I get it because maybe you're like, I think this is going to happen in this game. So we're going for it. But in my opinion, I prefer adding 2 together. And I know it lifts it up a little more and it makes it a little bit of a higher number, but I like to do that for the simple reason of now I get a lot of leeway because now if it's a run heavy game or Pacheco is just getting the ball handed to him, we still have a good chance to cover the spread, or I guess it's not the spread, but to cover this total. If it's a game where he's getting a lot of dump downs, we're still getting that. Nothing's more frustrating than when you bet yards on a receiver who's getting, these little dump downs, or reverse, where he's getting no receptions, but all he's doing is picking up these big yard gains, So like, you had 5 plus receptions and he has 2 receptions for 40 yards. And you're like, oh, okay, I was on the wrong side of that. So just keep that in mind when you're looking at that. This is interesting. Alternate touchdown props, which you're betting on how many touchdowns are in the game. I'm looking at some of these. It's like, four and a half out plus points. Don't hate that. I could see this being a low touchdown game. Another thing here, the Chiefs at minus 130 for longest touchdown. The Chiefs haven't had a ton of big plays in the passing game, right? They've been struggling in recent years with that. So maybe that's a spot where you think the Chargers may actually end up having the longer touchdown. The under longest touchdown yards. I could see this being a play because the bottom line is that neither of these teams are necessarily explosive touchdown teams. So maybe you say, look, 36 and a half. I like that value. So that's what we're going to be. That's kind of all the props. Now we're going to get into, and we'll give you our pick of the game. Now this one I continue to go back and forth on because the explanation I gave for both sides of this thing, I kind of agree with both sides, which I mean, really hurts my brain. But I just can't not bet the Chiefs here. I'm going to be watching this game completely unbiased to if the Chargers look good, they're going to get all the credit in the world from me. But when you're seeing the Chiefs coming in at a -3, it is just so tough for me to look at that and say we're not going to give that a chance. Because even if the Chiefs don't play a fantastic game, even if the Chiefs don't play a great game, I still think they can come in and cover a spread that is that low, And on top of it, the Chargers are not this team that's like, well, we know who they are. There are so many questions. They added back in Keenan Allen. You talk about Justin Herbert and what version of him are we going to see? There are just so many questions. The key injury, on their line that the Chargers have. All of these things just kind of say if I had to pick this game 100 times, you're probably going with the Chiefs a lot more than you're going with the Los Angeles Chargers. So it's for that reason we'll be going with the Chiefs, but I want it to be clear in this video that like this is one of those games that if it goes the other way and the Chiefs really struggle, I would not be shocked. So thank you all for watching.